A warm welcome to another edition of the Week in Review. This SKNIS produced program is geared at highlighting the work of the Government of National Unity for the past week. I am your presenter, Jamiela McPhail. In the top stories for this week, the Firearms Amendment Bill seeks to enforce stiffer penalties on gun-related crimes. Opening of the St. Kitts and Nevis High Commission in Canada is expected to strengthen diplomatic relations between the two allies. No political profiling involved in job recruitment process at HMP, says Superintendent of Prisons Hodge. And 8 nationals awarded at Government House for contributions to nation building. After much intense debate from parliamentarians in St. Kitts and Nevis, the Firearms Amendment Bill 2017 was read for a third time and passed into law on Day 3 of the National Assembly on Thursday, June 15th.
I rise to report formally to the House that the bill, the Firearms Amendment Bill 2017, has gone through committee with one amendment. And I now request, Mr. Speaker, that we have the third reading to allow the bill to be passed into law.
In his wrap-up of the debate, Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis and Minister of National Security, Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris, said that the bill had just one substantive provision to amend, and that was the law to increase the penalty for illegal possession and use of firearms.
This bill, as has been outlined repeatedly, has just one substantive provision to amend the law to increase the penalty for illegal possession and use of firearms. It is an amendment that was highly recommended by the High Command of the Security Forces. They saw it, and we agreed it was a critical tool in the fight against crime.
Prime Minister Harris said that in his presentation on June 13th, he outlines tangible evidence to reveal to all and sundry that the plan was indeed holistic.
It was never considered to be the linchpin in our fight against crime. Indeed, in my own presentation, it was very clearly stated that this was just one element as part of a broad and comprehensive response that we had undertaken to restore and to buttress public safety and security in this of our beloved country.
The presence of St. Kitts and Nevis will continue to grow in Canada as the Federation opened a High Commission in Ottawa on Friday, June 16, 2017. This is expected to further expand the diplomatic footprint of the country. Speaking in the National Assembly on Tuesday, June 13th, Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Honorable Mark Brantley, said that he expects the opening of the High Commission to be a really significant step in our diplomatic push to re-engage with Canada, as well as to repair our relationship with one of our oldest allies.
Mr. Speaker, the public would be aware that having attained independence in 1983, St. Kitts and Nevis joined the world community and subsequently set about building relationships with key countries far and wide. You will have heard the Honorable Prime Minister just moments ago speak to our relationship with the Republic of China, Taiwan. Given that I am about to depart the Federation to celebrate a momentous occasion for the Federation in Canada, I wish to highlight that it has always been and remains one of our longtime friends and strategic partners to the north. St. Kitts and Nevis and Canada officially established diplomatic relations on the 11th of October 1983, mere weeks after St. Kitts and Nevis gained its independence. The swift establishment of relations demonstrated, Mr. Speaker, the significance that our new country placed on its relationship with Canada. Well before independence, this is a relationship that manifested itself in various forms. These include, but are not limited to, educational opportunities, migratory flows, development finance cooperation, tourism and trade, and investment. Over the ages, St. Kitts and Nevis and Canada developed a strong working relationship in multilateral fora such as the OAS, United Nations, and of course the Commonwealth. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, as you well know, we remain with Canada among the 15 realm countries of the Commonwealth. I can therefore say with some confidence to the House that the foundation of our relationship and our friendship with Canada is strong, and will continue to invest diplomatically to ensure that it grows even stronger. Mr. Speaker, to paint a fulsome picture, I wish to remind this House that since the early 1980s, the interests of St. Kitts and Nevis were pursued through the OECS High Commission in Ottawa. It is no secret that since 2011, that Joint High Commission was dissolved and the OECS departed Canada. I should mention that this action was not welcomed by our dynamic diaspora across Canada, nor indeed by the Canadian authorities themselves. It must be noted that any downgrading of diplomatic representation of one country to another defeats the very purpose of building diplomatic relations. While St. Kitts and Nevis maintained a consulate in Toronto, this was no substitute, Mr. Speaker, to having a High Commission and a High Commissioner in Ottawa to interface with so strategic a partner as Canada. It is for this reason that St. Kitts and Nevis took the decision to establish its own High Commission in Ottawa. It is a strong signal to our national and friends across Canada and to the Canadian government itself that we value this relationship and do not take it lightly.
Superintendent of Prisons Junie Hodge has rubbished allegations made by the leader of the opposition, the Honorable Dr. Denzil Douglas, in the National Assembly on June 14th that job seekers are hired to work at Her Majesty's Prison, HMP, based on their political affiliation. In an interview with the St. Kitts and Nevis Information Services, SKNIS, Mr. Hodge said that the job recruitment process at the HMP is one that is transparent and not based on a person's political persuasion.
Mr. Williams, the recruiting process of Her Majesty's Prison for officers is as follows. We make the announcement on the various media in the Federation, and we need new officers to fill the basic grade post, whether if it's 10, 15, 20 or 1 person, we would make that announcement. Now, applicants, if they possess 4 O levels or the equivalent, good. If they don't, but they have the ability to read and write, when they come and they're being trained, they would have to do an exam, pass the exam in order to be employed. I know I skip ahead, but before all of this is done, each applicant, we will do a background check on them before they come for an interview. When they come for the interview, we do a further background check on them. The background check does not entail their political preference. That is of no issue to us. Your petition, your division, that's the greatest issue. Our Caribbean brothers and sisters who are here, legally, if they apply, they get the opportunity also. And I'll be frank, if our people apply for the position, the first preference will be to them. And anybody can see through that. Right? As old people say, every past the Christian is picked first. So after we have passed those stages, Then we would get the names of the individuals who we would have selected. We have an interview panel of 8 persons. 8 persons who would interview each individual who applied for the service. So after all that is completed, interview and everything, we send the name off to the Permanent Secretary and Minister of National Security, of which Her Majesty's prison fall under, recommending that these persons be given the chance. At no time, and I will repeat it again, at no time, the individual political affiliation is taken into consideration. At no time. And the public must be aware of that. Your political affiliation, that's your business. You're coming to do a job for the country. For the country. And once you're able and qualified to do it, that's all I'm concerned with. Because I've heard the former Prime Minister in Parliament making certain allegations. It's not true. It's not true. So I want the public to bear in mind.
And in more news, the contributions of 8 outstanding individuals to the development of St. Kitts and Nevis were celebrated on Wednesday, June 14th at an investiture ceremony at Government House. Governor General His Excellency S.W. Tapley Seaton hosted the ceremony, which saw the Companion Star of Merit conferred upon Lady Huldah Lawrence for her contribution in music. Receiving the Medal of Honor were Delia John for her contributions to public service in education, Vanta Walters for her contribution to early childhood development, Clarice Cotton for her contribution to education and Special Olympics, Sylvia Isaac for her contribution to nursing, and Maurice Widdowson for his contribution to tourism. The Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, MBE, was conferred upon Elkamida Willett for his contribution to sports and international cricket, as well as Vanta Archibald for her contribution to education, including library services and community activity. Deputy Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, the Honorable Sean K. Richards, addressed the invited guests at the investiture ceremony and reflected on the diverse backgrounds of the awardees, who all came from various communities across St. Kitts and Nevis. The Deputy Prime Minister added that he remains impressed that a number of the awardees continue to serve their country. He saluted them appropriately.
We are gathered here this morning for what I consider to be a very significant ceremony. A ceremony in which we are here to honor and to say thanks to some of the most outstanding citizens of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. I say that it is significant because these are persons who individually and collectively have made very deep contributions towards our own development as a federation. As I listen to the profiles of the individual persons and I reflect upon the current trust of this government and the trust of governments past, I concluded that these are persons who have made what we have been doing much easier. Several different aspects of our own development, I think, have been brought to the forefront this morning in looking at what the individuals here have contributed to the development of our society. Lady Huldah Lawrence, one who has excelled in the field of music and who has taught many persons here in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis to play different instruments, to become what we can perhaps consider to be experts also in the field of music. She has made a significant contribution as Recently, as about 2 to 3 weeks ago, we had a meeting at the Boardwalk Beach Hotel looking at our own cultural policy here in St. Kitts and Nevis, developing our national cultural policy. Our cultural policy, of course, takes into consideration all of the different aspects of our cultural development, be it music or be it any other art form such as dancing, our tangible cultural heritage, our intangible cultural heritage. And as we put that cultural policy in place, it is persons like Lady Huldah Lawrence who makes it quite easy for the government and for the Department of Culture, because a foundation has already been laid upon which we are able to build. We already have persons trained, we already have practitioners, and it is because we have those cadre of persons, it becomes an easier task for the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. Mrs. John, one who has given service in the field of hospitality, in the field of food and nutrition. CFBC in particular has a wing which has been named after Mrs. John for her pioneering and significant work in this field. As we look at our own people, we look at the preparation of our food, Minister Phipps certainly would agree with me that as we tackle some of the health problems that we have here in St. Kitts and Nevis, certainly the work that Mrs. John would have done in this field would help us as a nation to continue in that vein. As we try to expand the tourism industry and we begin to train more and more persons to take advantage of jobs which are coming available in the tourism industry, Mrs. John would have played her own part in training our people. She would have trained other persons who in turn are now providing that particular training for our people. Lady Vanta Walters, a pioneer in the field of education, one whose name is often associated with that of early childhood education. Early childhood education, I think we can all agree, is an important aspect of our own development as we try to educate our own children from a very early age. As I consider the work being currently done within the Ministry of Education, be it the education sector plan, which we are currently working on, be it a meeting which I attended about 2 weeks ago in Guyana as the chair for the CARICOM Human Resource Development Commission, where we are looking at creating the ideal Caribbean citizen. And a large part of the focus in creating that ideal Caribbean citizen is that of early childhood education, being able to educate more and more of our children at a very early age. And so even as I consider it, the work which is being done is not only work which has helped the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, but work which we can say is helping us as a Caribbean as we take our place within the world and we try to develop the different Caribbean economies. Mrs. Cotton, quite often I would see messages on my desk indicating that Miss Cotton would like to have an appointment to see me, and immediately I know what Miss Cotton wants to see me about. It is time for Special Olympics. They are ready to travel, and of course the Ministry of Education is being called upon to make a donation to this endeavor. The significance though is not so much so that they are traveling to Special Olympics. I think what is more significant is the fact that those amongst us who are differently abled are given opportunities that those of us who are very much abled would normally have and would normally take for granted. Without that opportunity, many of those persons can only think of Olympics in terms of being able to see it on the television, in terms of being able to hear people speak about it. Here is Miss Cotton, who has a passion for the differently abled and has taken that passion not only in terms of their own local education in an institution here in St. Kitts and Nevis, but giving them exposure overseas, helping them to compete with other persons, not just from the Caribbean region, but from throughout the world. And that, I do believe, helps the differently abled in terms of their own development, be it their social development or be it their own frame of mind in knowing that there are other persons out there with similar circumstances, but despite having those circumstances, we can come together, we can compete against each other, and we can be accepted just as any other individual competing in any other sporting event. Nurse Isaac, the field of health, one which indeed is important to every single individual here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And her work, from what I have gathered, has gone way back into the days when we had leprosy here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Leprosy, of course, is now a disease of the past, but I must say I admire Nurse Isaac for working with persons who had leprosy. I grew up in Sandy Point. The leper home was located in Sandy Point, and as children growing up, it's a place that you kept away from. It's a place that was associated with fear, because you hear that persons there, they have leprosy. It is something that you don't want to get, but yet persons have to work with them. And Nurse Isaac excelled in that field and then moved on to other field of healthcare. Minister Phipps, of course, would agree with me that as we look at our own mental health day treatment facility, as we expand into the field of oncology, etc., nursing continues to play a very important role in terms of our own development. And as I said earlier, it is because of the work that these individuals have done in these various fields of our development why it is so much easier. The investment is probably less, because these persons would have already pioneered work in these particular areas of our development. Miss Vanta Archibald, library services, the field of education, choral singing within her community, again, very, very significant and very important. The public library, as we know it, plays an important part in the education and the development of our people. For those who may not have the opportunity to visit other islands, a trip to the public library, opening books, reading books, helps to expand our own horizons. Numerous persons, I'm sure, would have used the public library for various fields of research. And finally, of course, well, not finally, because I have omitted Mr. Widdowson. I guess I was speaking to the ladies first. You know the good old saying, ladies first. And so now that I have spoken of the ladies, of course, I am at liberty to speak to the lone two males amongst the honorees. Mr. Widdowson. Mr. Widdowson, as I reflected on his story, what came to my mind is that quite often we frown upon persons of different islands, different countries moving into our own island, into our own country. Yes, We have free movement of persons within the OECS. We have signed various agreements within CARICOM. We have our citizenship by investment program, and we continue to welcome others to our shores for different reasons. But sometimes as a people, the fact is that we are somewhat intimidated when we know persons from overseas are coming here to live. There are those of us who feel they are coming to take our jobs, they are coming to utilize our resources without making the necessary contributions. But I think Mr. Widdowson is a good example of how regional movement of persons, of our Caribbean integration, of our citizenship by investment program, though he didn't come through that particular program, but a good example of how we can have others coming to our shores to contribute towards our development and not taking away from what we have as a people. Mr. Widdowson has come, he has, since in the 70s, been a businessman. And today, we have Caribel Batik in particular to show of what he has been able to do here in St. Kitts and Nevis, a very important part of our own tourism product. We visit it, we utilize it, we encourage our tourists to come here, and we heard the fact that he has never ever once applied for a work permit on behalf of any individual. That says that he has been able to hire our own local persons, providing employment for persons, providing income for many families who would have worked and continue to work at Caribel Batik. Finally, from Nevis, we have Mr. El Camido Willett, a sporting legend here in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. One who many of us feel should have been given the opportunity to play for the West Indies cricket team. He never got that opportunity, but certainly he has paved the way for Kittitians and Nevisians to be given that opportunity. I have been told that he has played a test match, but never selected to the final team. He has played for the West Indies team for 5 matches. As the Minister of Sports, I guess I need a lesson. But El Camido Willett. And as we look at sports and what we are trying to do within sports, within the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, Mr. Willett stands out as a good example for our young people, for our young cricketers. It says to them that there is hope, and like he was able to excel, likewise, you can excel.
A number of dignitaries attended the ceremony, including Minister of Public Infrastructure, the Honorable Ian Patches Liburd, Senators, the Honorable Wendy Phipps, and the Honorable Akila Byron, and National Hero, the Right Excellent, and Right Honorable Sir Kennedy Simmons. You have been viewing another edition of the Week in Review. This SKNIS-produced program is geared at highlighting the work of the Government of National Unity for the past week.